All right, I'm Dr. Craig. I'm an educational psychologist and the creator of BarkingDogs.net, and I'm here today representing the Barking Dogs Coalition. The video you are watching now is the fourth of the 8 videos our organization has created about the barking laws. Now, in this particular video, the one you're watching now, we're going to be talking about the consecutive disruption laws. However, if you'd like to jump over to any of our other videos about the barking laws, just go to the description section below. There you will find annotated links to all of our barking law videos, or just click on the link now appearing on your screen. Okay, so here we go. The consecutive disruption laws really just barely make a pretense of trying to prevent chronic barking. The best that can be said for those ordinances is that their goal seems to be simply to make it against the law for a dog to bark all the time, continuously, without let-up. Under the consecutive disruption laws, people are allowed to keep dogs that bark well past the point where you're climbing the walls and praying for a quick death. Under those ordinances, it is only illegal to keep a barking dog if the owner allows the barking to continue on for more than a certain number of minutes in a row. Just how many minutes the dog is allowed to bark in a row varies from place to place, with each city setting its own limit. But it usually seems to be something in the neighborhood of 20 torturous minutes. So in a place with a consecutive disruption law, putting your dog outside to bark unchecked is only deemed to be illegal if the barking continues on uninterrupted, that is to say without pause, for 20 minutes at a stretch. However, if the animal falls silent for more than 60 seconds during that 20-minute period, then the clock resets, and the dog can bark on nonstop for yet another 19 minutes of tooth-grinding misery without any law having been violated. And according to the consecutive disruption laws, as the victim, you are supposed to sit there, pencil in hand, staring at a stopwatch, keeping track of how many times your neighbor's dog barked and how many minutes in a row the hyperverbose beast screamed into the night before he finally fell silent for 60 seconds. When the dog barks at 2 in the morning, you're supposed to jump out of bed at 2 in the morning, grab your pencil and your stopwatch, and start documenting the verbalization of your neighbor's dog for as long as it continues. And every time the dog barks, you're supposed to get out of bed again and document the barking again and again and again and again. Just when the fuck are you supposed to sleep? What a farce. Like there's any possibility that a judge is ever going to sit there for 20 minutes, stopwatch in hand, as he listens to a recording of your neighbor's dog barking. And there's even less possibility that he would take your word for it. And how does your local government justify this outrageous imposition in which, as the victim, you're supposed to drop everything, reschedule whatever, allow the pursuit you were focused on to go undone, and hop to the task of documenting the minute-by-minute barking behavior of your neighbor's dog every time he barks for months? And why is it that you have to have your life torn apart by this tedious exercise in pointless documentation? It is so the clowns in your local government, who passed your unenforceable barking laws in the first place and created this crisis with their low licensing standards for dog ownership, it's so that they, along with the buffoons down at Animal Control, will have proof that your neighbor's dog is actually barking. Okay, you want proof? You start by marching your feckless ass on over to the victim's house. And while you're there, take a look at the neighbor's dog. See how he's moving his mouth? Well, that's what they do when they're barking. Hear those percussive shrieks that blast relentlessly from his lower rostral sub-snout region? Those are barks. That's barking. If you go there, you'll see it happening right in front of your eyes. You want proof, motherfucker? Just go over there and look at the dog barking. There's your proof. But no, you'd rather harass the victims and hassle them and watch them come apart under the strain of an abusive system that makes it impossible for them to prove that something that rarely stops ever happens. If the powers that be had any actual interest in ridding our streets of chronic barking, they'd make it super easy for the victims to document the abuse. And it reveals so much about their agenda that instead of making it easy, they make it incredibly difficult for the victims to prove that their neighbor's dog is barking. When in truth, that's something that could be conclusively established by way of a neutral observer within 24 hours of the time a complaint is filed. For that matter, why doesn't animal control start by just knocking on the perp's door and asking him if his dog is barking? He might just fess up. So you see, there's really no need to subject the victim to that ordeal of massive documentation. But they want to do it because there's a strong punitive element to the way your local government responds to barking dog complaints. They want to make you pay a price for trying to make them do their jobs. It is obviously just another way the system goes about pleasing the dog industry by harassing the victims, while in the process blocking the victim's efforts to hold the dog owner accountable. The best way to make this video available to those who need to see it is to hit share, like, and subscribe. So please do that now. Okay, back to the task at hand. Under a consecutive disruption ordinance, your neighbor's dog can bark for 57 minutes out of every hour without the law having been violated. If you have 2 or 3 neighbors who each keep a dog that barks frequently, then under that law, you can have the sound of somebody else's barking dog going off inside your house literally once every 10 seconds, 24 hours a day, and legally there still isn't a damn thing you can do to get it stopped. Now, obviously the consecutive disruption laws were not written to prevent chronic barking. Quite clearly, those are pro-perp laws that are intended to thwart the efforts of anyone who tries to force their neighbor to quiet his dog. It is noteworthy that while animal control demands that the victimized complainants immerse themselves in the task of extensively documenting the barking of their neighbors' dogs, they make no demand whatsoever on the irresponsible dog owner. It's pretty easy to figure out whose side animal control is on. Now, to make those laws even worse, now I realize that it's hard to believe that those laws could be any worse, but they can. Many of those laws are made even worse by a clause that says that the dog barking continuously for 20 or 30 minutes was not illegal if the barking was provoked. Now, maybe that doesn't sound too bad until you stop to realize that under that law, anything the dog sees constitutes a provocation to bark. The postal worker walks by, that's a provocation. There's a cat in the distance, well, that's a provocation too. He hears another dog bark several houses over. You walk out your front door, a car pulls up, a child rides by on a bicycle, a bird flutters past, a cloud drifts by overhead. All that is considered to be provocation to bark. In fact, the law considers anything the dog sees to be a provocation. That means that as a victim of chronic barking, not only must you somehow prove that the dog is in the habit of barking 20 or 30 minutes in a row without pausing, but you must also prove that the dog didn't see anything during that time and that he was barking at absolutely nothing. There's no way you can do that. And even if you could, they still wouldn't do anything because the system is not set up to stop chronic barking. Rather, the system is set up to ensure that the problem will be allowed to continue. So dog owners will not be burdened with the need to take responsibility for the untrained, unsocialized dogs they are bringing into our residential neighborhoods in massive numbers. You know, you'll sometimes see these beautiful little barking laws that say, in effect, if the dog's barking and someone is bothered by the barking, then that makes it illegal. And that sounds great until you actually try to actuate the law. And that's when you learn that to prove that the dog is barking, you have to document the outrage through the mechanism of the consecutive disruption law or a multiple household law. And there you have it. The right hand taketh away that which the left hand pretendeth to give. You know, for a minute there anyway. Now you might want to pause to have a drink or take a Valium before we get to this next part. Many consecutive disruption ordinances also contain a clause that says the law will not be enforced. Now that's a joke right there because there was never any chance that it would be enforced in any case. But there's a clause that says that the law will not be enforced if the person complaining about the barking is abnormally sensitive to noise. Well, how the hell do you tell if somebody is abnormally sensitive to noise? Well, that's easy. If the barking bothers you, then that proves that you are abnormally sensitive. Hence, your neighbor's dog is allowed to bark on forever. And it's your fault that you can't get it stopped because you are too sensitive. So it's like catch-22. If the barking does not bother you, then the law will be enforced. But of course, if it doesn't bother you, then you're not going to complain anyway, so there'll be no need to enforce it. But if the barking does bother you, then that proves that you are abnormally sensitive to the noise. So under that circumstance, the law also will not be enforced. The only difference is that now it's your fault that it's not being enforced because you are too sensitive. Okay, maybe we should all pause at this point just to fucking scream. But wait, it gets worse. If you become horrifically ill, so you desperately need to rest in a quiet place, then at that point, you have become abnormally sensitive to the noise. Hence, the sicker you are and the more desperately you need quiet, then legally speaking, the less you are entitled to it. So the consecutive disruption laws are not exactly the answer to your problem either. All right, in a few seconds, a link will appear on your screen. Just click on that and it will take you to the next video in our sequence series about the barking laws, where you'll learn that the people in animal control are not your friends, and they are not there to control your neighbor's dog. They are there to control you, the barking victim. Okay, watch for that link. It'll be coming up here in just a second.